Ready? Hi. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Good evening. If everyone could please rise and join me for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for that. I'm scrolling all the way back. So we open our meeting up typically with public comment, and I have not been advised that there is any public comment, so we're going to move past that, and I've not been advised that there's any department comment. Okay, so under our discussion and possible vote, just kind of a heads up, we have a draft of the request for expressions of interest for 150 Center Street for the Select Board to review and make comment on. And 2, we have the ABCC additional information for 6-8 Elm Park. 3, we have the Groveland Conservation Commission request to proceed with an adopt-a-site proposal for VZ Memorial Park. 4, we have Whittier Tech and Northern Essex College shared campus model, another meeting recap and update. And 5, we have trash and recycling discussion and update. We have one appointment request. Minutes, and then, of course, our usual administrator's time, old unfinished business, select board time reports. So we'll start right away with the 150 Center Street. Has everyone had a chance to review the paperwork on that? And it's the Economic Committee, right? Yes.
Correct. The Economic Development Committee has
Yes.
met with the consultant and his associates. At the last meeting, we had provided you the presentation that was provided to the Economic Development Committee.
Okay.
A draft of the expression of interest was provided to you at the last meeting as well. That's the same document that you'll see in your packet this evening. So we were just hoping to, again, make sure if the board had any additional comments or any edits that they would like to see made.
Okay.
We do have a working group. One of your members is on that working group. That is Select Board Member Boucher, sorry.
It's okay.
And then we also have a representative from the Economic Development Committee who is Angus Jennings, and he is participating via Zoom this evening.
Okay.
And then we also had a representative from the Planning Board, which was Chris Goodwin. So they all had an opportunity to review this document. A few of those members have actually provided edits on the document, and the consultant is in the process of assembling those comments and incorporating them as part of a story map. And so the way that this will be distributed through a story map type of presentation, which is a really interactive tool that allows you to scroll through a website, and it provides all of the relevant documentation. So instead of having a very lengthy document of over 100 pages with relative studies and engagement sessions, it's a way to get quick information and then also link to those vital documents and reports so that the developer or those interested would be able to get a better understanding of the process and what's already been done and kind of what the town's been focusing on. So again, this evening, we're just looking for any additional comments and to, once finally drafted, officially release the expression of interest out to developers and those interested to provide proposals. At that point in time, once we receive the proposals by that due date, we will then have an opportunity to sit down again with the Economic Development Committee as well as the consultant and the Select Board to discuss those results.
Okay. And I think I'm not looking at it right off the top. I know I saw it. Oh, here it is. The dates that we're looking at, well, we're in April now, so is there going to be a site walk by appointment scheduled in April? Or do you think?
So we'll need to adjust those dates based
Okay.
upon the release of the report, but there will be a site visit for those interested to attend.
Okay, so the original date to release was March 18th. So we're going to roll all of these dates forward. So we release the expression of interest, and then there's a date for developers and other interested parties to come back with their proposals.
Correct.
And then there's a site walk by appointment scheduled, answering of questions, and then another date of expression of interest due. So they do question, site walk, and things like that before the expression of
Submit
interest.
their proposal.
Oh, okay. So there's, it looks like we'll be into June.
Correct. The project
Okay.
will be completed by the end of June. We do have a grant with Mass Development, so we must complete the work by the end of the fiscal year. And we're on schedule to do so.
Okay, okay. Okay, because it's a very great, it's a nice comprehensive document, has a lot of information, and you're talking about putting this up on like a site map that people who are interested can look at and interact with.
Correct. We'll be posting it on the central register, and then we'll also be sending it to all developers within the area that might be interested in putting together a proposal.
Okay, good. And Stephanie, did you have a question on this? Yeah, you have to, else you won't be on television, vocally speaking.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Bartelt. I live on Chestnut Street, and I'm here on behalf of the Conservation Commission, who has not been involved in this process at all, and we're concerned about 2 areas of wetlands, as well as previously mentioned, the habitat at the back of the property. So I'm wondering how we can be involved.
So that's not entirely the case. The Conservation Commission was heavily involved in the feasibility study, which is the report that's referenced under the planning process, which was done in October 2023. The chairman, Mike Dempsey, was involved in that process when we were working with Niche Engineering as well as in his associates on all of the habitat, wetland concerns, aquifer concerns. We had public engagement sessions which were held where the public was invited to attend. So the Conservation Commission was heavily involved with that planning process, which the focus was 150 Center Street.
Right, and the interactive map would include that kind of detail?
So the story map is exactly what you see before you, kind of a little bit and more of like a public-facing interface on the internet. But what you have in terms of the writing, you'll see it says planning document, it says the comprehensive master plan, which the Conservation Commission was heavily a part of. It mentions the 150 Center Street readiness feasibility study, which the Conservation Commission was involved in. They talk about all of the other development plans that we had put together in the past, such as those that were incorporated as part of the purchasing of the property, which the
Correct.
Conservation Commission was heavily involved in. So there was a lot of information that's included in this document that relative boards, committees, and the public was involved in.
I mean, I personally went to most, if not all, of the comprehensive master planning sessions myself, but I do have a mind map that shows there is wetland near the entrance and also at the back of the property that we would be concerned about. I mean, I don't know, not having access to this map that you guys are looking at, where your entrance or if this wetland, if your development project is outside the 100-foot buffer zone, but that would be our concern.
Okay, well, thank you. I mean, it seems like they have the environmental identified. We're not looking at the interactive document as much, I think that obviously anything that comes through the town would have to go through the boards in town as well.
Correct. At this
Yeah.
point in the process, we're not looking at developing the property. We're looking for people to give us ideas of what they believe that they would be able to do with the site based upon the feedback and the feasibility studies
Correct.
and the sensitive areas that have been identified by many as part of the feasibility process. So we're not looking at actually developing the property. This is a non-binding process. We're not looking for anything other than ideas from individuals in the field that would be willing to or would be interested in making the investment if and when, a big if and when, the town decided to dispose of the property or move in that direction.
Correct.
So this really is, again, another due diligence phase. We're not going to be moving forward with anything without having had a conversation with the appropriate people and having a vote at town meeting.
Right, and I'll just read because I happen to get to it. The environmental says 25 acres is within the priority habitat of rare species, including a protected turtle migration area on the eastern side of the site, 8 acres. Most of the site is within the Zone 2 Aquifer Protection District. Some areas of the site include wetlands. A smaller portion include floodplains at the eastern and western edges. So I don't think anything is being overlooked here. I think the point is that there's been discussion over and over again as to what, if anything, does the town wish to do with this property? And there's been, a lot of discussion where they say, well, why don't you just sell off a few lots at the front? And the problem is that there's there's nothing there right now. So a retail business is not going to locate into the middle of nothing and hope that somebody stops by their store or their restaurant.
I just wonder if
So-
one of our members should be on this committee that you have.
Well, the committee has already, I think, done most of the work. I think the next phase of it, certainly, you know, when they start to come in with what kind of interest is there. I mean, it's possible that interest might be limited because people don't want to have to deal with the different designations of the areas. But hopefully, Groveland being a desirable town, there will be an expression of some interest, and it will be in such a way that we can say, oh, okay, that might work. I mean, we definitely bought this as a protection for the aquifer, but that wasn't the entire totality of that purchase. There was always a thought towards, well, you know, maybe some of it we can sell off. But I think rather than selling it off, to ask for an expression of interest gives us the opportunity to look at some ideas,
Oh, absolutely.
you know, rather than just trying to sell off lots and hope for the best. And I think that, you know, given that we don't have a lot of land left in the town to develop for commercial, retail, and/or housing, it makes sense for us to start to become a partner in this process and look at it.
Yes, I'm
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
as stated, concerned about sensitive areas on that. piece of land.
I'm sure you're not going to be the only one, I'm sure, because I know part of the purchase was protection of the aquifer and the wetlands and the turtles, you know. So they're identified here in the paragraphs here. And, I mean, I personally would be interested to see what comes of it. I don't see anything that I would change in this. I think it looks good. It identifies everything. Unless somebody on the board has changes to it, I would think that you should proceed.
The only comment I had that I shared with with Annie and Rebecca was adding a section. I know it's within the document. It goes a little bit with what Stephanie was just saying, adding something blatantly for like risks or limitations. So the aquifer, the conservation restrictions, them knowing it's not necessarily a walkable street. I wasn't sure if that was something that should be called out separate. And I know they want to
Yeah.
keep the document simple. That's the point of it. So I didn't want to,
Well, I think that it's pretty glaring when you read the environmental,
yeah.
you know, that we have a protection on our aquifer, we have a rare species habitat, and we have wetlands in there. So I think it's very clearly stated, and it jumped right out at me. It talks about what it's adjacent to, it talks about the utilities, the soils, the shrubbery. I don't know if I'd call it forest out there yet. It's more like dead brush, but,
Yeah, in terms of it being walkable, I know that we're going to be putting in a sidewalk up to Atwood from School Street, which will make that much more walkable. And then when you do a development like that, those are things that you can discuss when somebody shows an interest.
Right.
right.
And we need you to extend the sidewalk, we're on both sides of the street. So those are aspects that we can discuss and maybe get for the town. In terms of the conservation aspect, I think when we originally did it, we were only looking at a small portion of the total acreage that kept everything fairly away from the sensitive areas. And before we ever get really involved in the conservation, it's going to have to actually have some sort of plan to move forward, just like any plan. It always has to go before conservation if there's any doubt of whether or not it's going to be there. So I think it's spelled out there.
Yeah. I mean, Center Street, I mean, I walk along Center Street now. I mean, but right now, there's not much traffic on it because there's nothing really there. You know, you go past. Yeah, I mean, that part of Center Street, you know, is pretty wide open and the visibility is good, you know, to jump out of the way of any crazy cars. But, you know, I look at it as a pretty safe walking street, and I know people like sidewalks. I guess my only concern with sidewalks is sidewalks require more maintenance from the town. So is there something else that can be done to provide walking space without necessarily creating more sidewalks and more infrastructure? Because unless there's homes there to clear the sidewalks, they probably won't get cleared in the winter anyway. you know, so I don't know. That's more of a planning board thing, I guess. What point does a road need a sidewalk versus just an extra extended area on the side to provide for people to walk safely or jog?
So all the boards will be included in the RFP process if
Okay.
in fact the town decides that they want to move forward with that. At that point in time, based upon their request for expressions of interest, we'll gather exactly what somebody would be willing to do in that particular location. And then based upon what they would be willing to do, does that fit what was discussed in the feasibility study? And then does that fit from a conservation standpoint, from a zoning perspective? All of that will have to be factored in, because the request for proposal aspect is then what we're putting out, that this is what we want to do. And we wouldn't want to put something out there that hasn't been vetted by the planning board, the zoning board, conservation commission, et cetera. So this part was really just to identify like a synopsis of the work that was done through the feasibility study process
Right.
of what would the town be interested in proceeding with.
Right.
So it will go through many more steps, and it will go through much more in-depth analysis by the relevant parties. This part is just to say to developers, hey, this is what we were thinking for this particular area. We're looking for economic development. We're looking for a new revenue generator for the town. We're looking to, you know, support that in a manner that we think is within the characteristic of the community. And this is what we envision for the future for this particular site. Would this work? Could you do this? Do you have different suggestions? Would you say we are short-sighted? Do you think the market will support this? And kind of solidify all of the additional work that we had done as part of the feasibility, because that was done in 2023. The economy's changed. Things are different. What would attract somebody to our area, and what would attract them to, again, make the investment? So this is just, again, the very beginning phases of reaching out and getting more involvement with, you know, parties that will be part of this process.
I think, I mean, I'm in favor. I mean, 150 Center Street, I feel like that would be a great location for the things that we've discussed in the comprehensive master planning sessions. I'm just wondering if, you know, Mike and I know that area really, really well for lots of reasons. And, you know, we'd kind of like to be involved in the site walks and things like that. So maybe we could be invited on those.
I don't have any information on the sidewalk. Like, it will be, people will ask for a sidewalk, right? It's not like one big sidewalk for everybody, right?
So it will be set at a date and time, and anybody who's interested in submitting a proposal would be able to walk the site.
Okay. And could residents walk along and just watch? I don't know. Does it matter?
I'm not sure they would want to, but I mean, it's public property. They're
I mean,
allowed
we're-
to be on
again,
the property.
Conservation
So,
Commission,
I mean,
so
if the
like-
It's town
Conservation
property,
Commission would like
yeah.
to be invited, we can send out an invitation
Yeah.
to the Conservation Commission. But it's really not a way for us to engage too much with the developer on, it's more to answer questions, I guess, if there is questions that come up. But we can
Right.
definitely extend an invitation. That's not a problem whatsoever.
Thank you.
Right. Yeah, I like the idea of getting this out there and asking for interest, because I think for so many years now, we've spoken about the purchase of that property, that it's an override on the tax rate, and can we do anything more with it? Do we want to do anything more with it? I think the only way we're going to figure that out is by seeing what someone else would want to do with it and whether or not we're okay with that. I mean, until we see what the interest is, we won't know. I mean, it could go two different ways. It could go that they would want to do way more than we're willing to live with, so we're not interested in that. And then we'll know the answer to that question. But it also could be there's ideas out there that we hadn't thought of. I mean, it seems like we're always reacting. You know, we reacted to the Garrison Street proposal. We haven't built any additional elderly housing since the somewhat, I mean, it's not restricted to only elderly behind here, but there were proposals to add a building there, and then it just fell by the wayside. We had an affordable housing committee, and then they did a great report, and then that fell by the wayside. So when people ask, why are we in the position we're in with the Salem Street apartments, with the Garrison Street, that's why. So wouldn't it be better to take a minute when we have time here and find out something about a piece of property that we might have some say in? And that way, maybe we can direct something that is going to come to our town anyway, direct it in a way that we all would be pleased with. So, again, I think it's great work that they did. I'm interested to see what comes of it. Mark, do you have anything to add to it?
No, but I mean, right here in the development conditions, it says approximately 20 acres of the 61, so I'm assuming that means only the, the unrestricted areas, so,
Yep.
I mean, I have to assume they have a little common sense when they do the site walk, it's, but.
We're not giving it all away.
Then again, it is, it's, I'm good.
And Ed, do you have some comments?
No, I think this is a good idea.
Okay.
I'd like to see some light industry down there, something to bring taxes into the town. We've had this suggested for that area before, and I think it's a great idea. And with the taxes going up, the businesses contribute, but they don't ask for too much in return. No, I think it's a great idea.
Good. Anyone else, Jason or Becky? No? Okay, do you need a vote from the board to say that we've reviewed the draft and that we,
I think it'd be helpful to solidify the process and just that you're in support of moving forward.
okay, make a motion for a vote to proceed forward with the request for interest with this document?
I'll make a motion that we proceed forward with the request of interest for this project.
I'll second that.
And Becky seconded it. Okay, any more discussion? There be none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? It is unanimous. Thank you. Okay, so next on our agenda, moving along, we have this is the restourant downtown, am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so do you want to walk us through what the issue is there with their, I read through it, it's the name issue, right?
Correct. So as part of the process for liquor license approval, it first needs to go through the local authority, which is the select board, and then it needs to go to the ABCC with the state. And so then they review the document, and if you recall, there's been a couple of issues with the document that was submitted. I think there was a birth date issue.
Yes.
There was another date issue. The latest issue was in regards to the lease that was submitted as part of the application. It did not have the proper name, so the ABCC had requested that they submit this document, and because we are the local granting authority, all correspondence must come through this board. So as you'll see, as part of your packet, there's a request for the additional information from the ABCC for the lease and the correct name, and then you'll see that the lease has been submitted. So now, with your vote and approval, we'll then send that lease information back to the ABCC for their review and to see whether or not they would like to grant the license.
So do we have to motion to grant the license again, or just
Just
to?
to accept the documentation.
Okay. So has everyone had a chance to review the lease that was submitted? Okay, so the document refers to the name change would occur wherever there's refer to a Take Corona Mexican Restaurant Organization Corporation is hereby amended to the Take Corona Groveland Mass Corp. Yes.
Maybe Rebecca can answer. Did the company change names? Is that why? Did they submit the first application under a name? the Cape Corona Mexican restaurant and then change the name at some point?
I'm actually not 100% positive on that. I believe it just didn't match what they submitted on their alcohol license. I'm not sure if they changed the name or they just didn't, well, I guess they would have changed the name, right? They would have had it on their lease as.
Or the original lease, yeah, was the Tech 8's Corona Mexican Restaurant Organization. They referred, and then they signed a new lease, it sounds like, with a new name, so they changed their name.
Okay, so they must have changed the name.
They must have.
Yes. So we need a vote to send this forward to the ABCC liquor license people.
I'll make a motion that we send the information to the ABCC for the new leash.
Yes. Need a second on that?
Second that.
And I guess if there's any more of these changes, it would be good if we could have like all the documents. So we start to look back and just make sure we're following the trail here, because I do remember the other name. Yes. Okay, all in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Okay. And now we're up to the Adopt a Space proposal. Michael Dempsey for VZ Memorial Park.
The agenda item is not quite right because it says for adopt a space proposal for VZ Park. It's not just for VZ Park, it's for all of the conservation properties. So
Oh,
anyway, the purpose of this program aims to enhance the town's aesthetics through community involvement in maintaining public spaces, particularly those spaces under the care, custody, and control of the Groveland Conservation Commission. And so the commission works on mainly 4 larger properties: VZ Park, Meadow Pond Reservation, Center Street Greenway, and Town Forest Reservation. And so our idea is to kind of match what the town does for the Adopt an Island program, where people put plantings or whatever on an island, and they get to put a sign up thanking them for it. So we've got the same idea. We hope to broaden it a little bit with any kind of maintenance or plantings or sponsor of a trash receptacle or anything like that, particularly at these 4 properties. We already have a couple of vendors interested in doing some plantings and a gardening project and some tree maintenance at a couple of different spots at VZ Park. So we're excited about it because I think it, again, to make things look good, that's the biggest part of why we want to do it, but also to use more volunteers, to encourage volunteers to be involved, whether it be residents or commercial establishments, whatever they are, and make a real difference in how the conservation properties look.
that sounds good. Questions? Ed?
No questions.
Mark?
Nope.
So will that include like entrances to trailheads?
Yes,
So I'll get them to put up like a map and keep it
Yes.
clean and entrance and,
yeah.
who would be heading up that program?
Well, the commission will do it. So, we have an agent, so the agent would be pretty much dealing with people who want to do it. The commission will review. We have an application that a vendor or a person would fill out, and then the commission would review it and approve it.
Okay, and then what about the town itself in terms of any type of contract of what's gonna happen if it's not maintained?
If it's not maintained, then their sign will be taken down. And that's what they're signing up for. They're
Right.
gonna have to understand that to get,
So something like that's gonna be run through the town administrator, and
well,
Run through
it
it.
can be, you know,
I think it would be a good idea.
yeah, I mean, we communicate with the town administrator, so.
So is there a fee involved in this for them to have the island?
No,
So
No.
what if more than one place wants, like,
first come, first served. So
to fight for it?
it's, again, it's similar to what the town's doing with the Adopt an Island program. So we will, on the commission's website, we'll have a list of sites and possible things that we're looking for, and then whoever wants to come and say, well, do it, you know, they'll get to try it out for a year. And it's from year to year, so just because one company, say, does it for 1 year, they don't necessarily have to do it forever.
Okay, and do you provide the sign, or do they provide their own?
No, they'll provide the sign matching our requirement.
Oh, okay, you have a requirement on the
Yeah,
signage size?
yep.
Okay, and is it an annual commitment then, so every year?
Yes.
They would have to apply again?
Yes, I mean,
Okay.
for plantings, it's pretty straightforward from about May through October. But for other things, you know, for a trash receptacle or something with their name on it, you know, might be for the whole year.
Okay. It sounds reasonable, sounds like a good idea. Do you have any concerns or anything? Do you want to move this forward?
I'll make a motion that we adopt this.
Adopt a space donation, right? That's what it is? The Conservation Commission Adopt a Space? Is that
Yes.
the program name? Okay.
Yes.
I'll second that.
It's seconded and motioned. Any other comments? All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. And that's the, okay, and now we're up to Whittier Tack, which, as you know, Jason will take over. I have to recuse myself as I'm an instructor at Whittier Tech.
Thank you.
That's all right, I can give. I haven't moved you out the door yet. See, it's a good sign.
Unfortunately, I wasn't at the last meeting, and I heard it was a really good, productive meeting, so maybe I should have turned it over to Rebecca alone by a long time ago. However, I did get the update, and one of the things that made it very productive is Raleigh came to the table. I know that, like I said last time, that a couple of select board members from Newburyport and another town were going to go reach out to them and talk to them. And everybody that was there was in agreement to move forward with the process. I know that the college had committed to $500,000 to go towards the feasibility study. The superintendent of the school said she wasn't 100% sure. She said 500,000 most likely. She would like to do more. But there was also a big push to remove the original site from the feasibility study of where the Whittier Tech is now. And the reason why that there was a big push from everybody to remove that is because that's already been done. It was done and it failed, it didn't go anywhere, so we don't see the need to spend the money to do it again. Everybody was in agreement with that, and the reason why I wanted it on the agenda here is because although we don't have the final figures, I wanted to get an idea of how the board felt about putting up their share of the money for the feasibility study. The high estimate of what the feasibility study was going to be $2.5 million. Groveland, if my calculations were correct, would have been on the hook for $167,000. If the college puts in 500 and the Whittier Tech puts in 500, that reduces our cost to 60,000. And I think it's a relatively small price to pay to support the schools and to support this project that looks like it's going to potentially cost a lot less than redoing the school. Like I had mentioned in the previous, they were talking about conveying the land to Whittier Tech, so they don't have to buy any of the land. And then there's a lot of talk around, well, what happens to Whittier Tech now? How does that process take place, and how is that going to help reduce the prices, whether they sell it, whether they lease it, what they're going to do with it? So those are the things that everybody's looking at. A lot of that stems around the push from legislators that have really shown an interest in making this happen. And since it's got support from there, they were able to try to leverage the school board association into making it work and making it happen. But again, it's going to need all 11 communities to commit to it. And I just wanted to have an idea of how everybody felt about it. What do you think, Ed?
Yes, I just have a question pertaining to it, though. With Rowley not responding at all, will that kill the project?
Yes, it would have, but they responded. They were there. That's one of the things that made it productive. They were there and they were on board.
Okay. Well, I know they've been holding back.
Yes, there's a lot of controversy after the first few meetings where everybody was adamant about not changing things. And I think people realize that if this is going to move forward, everything's going to change regardless. So I think that was a big step to help them get back on board and get along with it. And your opinion?
I watched that, the video there on Facebook the other day there that you shared. And, no, if it's gonna cost us 60 grand, I mean, we spend more money on dumber stuff, so I'd love to give the kids an, opportunity and keep moving
Opportunities.
that forward.
And you?
Yeah, I agree. The 60,000 sounds better than the
And
167,000.
it's not set in stone,
Right.
It's still in conversation, but I felt it was important just to get an idea. So whether I do make the next meeting, which I intend on it, or Rebecca does, we can actually say that the board discussed it and they're in support of it. So I just wanted to give everybody an idea and an update. And did I leave anything else out?
No, just the timeline. So for the MSBA, we must submit by July 1st of this year. So they are looking to do a deadline for communities to respond by June 1st, so that if there is any outliers or if there's any issues or community needs to hold a meeting, they're able to do so that we can get those letters into the MSBA in a timely manner. We did discuss with them that we are during our very busy time of the year with town meetings, so I think it was well accepted that they pushed their May 1st deadline to June 1st. So that will give us an opportunity after town meeting to convene, and then we'll be able to take an official vote, and we'll also have the final figures, and we'll also have the final letter. Because the other thing that was brought up that was a point of discussion was that the MSBA has said that amend as may be needed the existing vocational regional school district agreement. And I think that what many of the communities kind of vocalized at the last meeting was that this is not an amendment to an existing agreement. We're talking about a brand-new agreement. So we all know that the original agreement done in 1967 focused on this particular site and this particular model. Now we're talking about something completely different. So that's no longer a point that we need to be focusing on. We've all decided that it didn't work the first time. It wasn't successful the first time. So instead of trying to go down that path and spending monies going down that path, we need to explore the new path that everybody seems to be on board with, at least exploring. So I think as part of the letter that we would be submitting to MSBA, we're still waiting for them to work on that language that kind of expresses that point, that we are looking at a new agreement, not amending what's currently there. So the deadline and just the language change as well as the final figures should be to us within the month, if not by the end of next month. And we'll be able to have that meeting and take an official vote on whether or not Groveland would like to sign off on the letter.
And then when would the monies need to be available?
It wouldn't need to be done until FY '27 or '28, depending on whether or not the MSBA accepted us into the eligibility period.
And then if they do accept us in and we go through that process, it's still another 5 years before we'll be looking at putting up the money for a new school.
Correct. And that also leads to more conversations about funding sources as to whether or not there's additional monies available. And as we discussed at one of our previous meetings, the governor has put money into, I forget, it's escaping me right now, one of the recent bills that is specific to exploring something like this. So you have higher education monies, you have monies in that particular bill, as well as private foundations and others looking to make investments in a venture like this. So that will all be part of the conversation as well. And then we'll have more of a detailed cost as to what we're looking at and what the building would look like and all of that stuff. And in addition to what the model would look like and how and what of those 4 different options we discussed at one of the previous meetings, what that looks like, you know, how they're sharing a campus, what they're sharing, what infrastructure they're sharing, whether, like, what type of academics are they sharing, what when we say shared model, what does that really mean and what does that look like? And that will go hand in hand with the actual building and figuring out what that looks like as well.
Can I ask you for the new regional agreement, where does that fall into that timeline? I know how the Pentucket one was, and that was just editing an existing one, starting from scratch. I imagine will take some time. Is there, based on what the dates you were throwing out there, would that be after the feasibility study or during?
So it wouldn't be with the process as it stands now. It's
Okay.
just the MSBA wanted the commitment from the 11-member communities that they'd be willing to explore that.
Okay.
And we're saying that we're willing to explore a new agreement, and that new agreement won't take shape until we know what the shared campus model looks like
Okay.
and what the building project looks like. That will be the driving force as to how everybody contributes, how many students are able to be in the school, all of that stuff. So
Okay.
it was more so language that would reflect that. So we wouldn't have to do anything except sign a letter saying that we'd be willing to look at the agreement, we would set aside the funding, and that we are exploring the feasibility process with the new campus. It's just the language, trying to figure out how to relay that we don't want to go backwards. We don't want to focus on just the Whittier School. We want to focus on the shared campus.
Okay. That makes sense, thank you.
Yeah, in terms of the agreements, most of the agreement itself would get set up by the SBA. I mean, we can submit a lot of different things, but they seem to hack it up pretty good. There's only a couple small aspects that they allow the towns to handle on their own and let them commit to, which I thought was a very interesting process that I learned about. So, any other questions? And with that, I'll turn it back over to Kathy.
It's exciting what's going on at Whittier.
Yes.
Okay, thanks for sharing that. Now we're going to move on to the trash and recycling program, and the question was raised to bring forward some information from the Trash and Recycling Committee, because we are actually, in the capital plan is a request for a replacement of the recycling bins. I don't know how many people in here know, but the original recycling bins were just an open green bin, and you just threw stuff in it, and hopefully it stayed in it. And then some people could get extra ones. You'll see some houses that have 2 of them. Maybe some people have 3. I haven't seen 3 that much. But that's what we all came down and got from the town hall when we started the curbside recycling. And it was exciting. I mean, because we went from bringing our recycling down here behind the town hall, and volunteers sorted it, which was fun because you got to see everybody, to being able to put it out in front of your house. So I know it doesn't sound like such a big deal, but back then it was. It was a big deal. And everybody in town got these little plastic bins and got extras too, if you wanted them, from what I've seen out there. But, you know, clearly we've outgrown that, and we see the damage to the recycling. So we came up with a list. We had our meeting of the Trash and Recycling Committee, a real quick meeting, just to kind of go back over our notes about recycling, just the recycling issue, and why why we thought it was a good idea to go ahead with this part of our whole trash and recycling program in advance of deciding the next contract, because we still have one more year on the current contract. So I have a list of 9 items that I'll read through, and then I'm going to add a 10th item based on a recent email, and actually it was an issue that has been brought up before, and I forgot to bring it up in our meeting, so I'll just throw it on the end as number 10. And I'll just go through these and then take questions from board members, anybody that's concerned. So first, we found that when we did this survey, we brought forward the proposal to the select board for the 34-gallon cart and the 96-gallon recycling bin back in, was it November? Now I'm getting my dates mixed up. Was it November-ish? Maybe November-ish. And then the select board said, you know, can you go out and get more information, some more community feedback on this proposal and these items? And so we sat and we reviewed a list of questions. We had a survey that we'd tried to work on, and we kept pushing it off, and we reviewed questions the select board forwarded to us, plus questions of our own, and we came out with a survey that actually got a really big response. I think it ended up being, was it close to 700 people by the end?
It was over.
Over 700, yes. So, and looking through the results, they were asked if their current recycling bin or cart, whatever they're using, was large enough. And we did find that approximately more than 50% of the respondents said, no, it's not large enough. You know, some people said they had been using their own bin for recycling, but by and large, people felt that they didn't have a recycling bin that was large enough. So that came to our consideration of just the 96-gallon carts, because it would give all of our residents not only a cleaner, drier way to get their recycling out, because they would have a lid. Now everything wouldn't get soaked if it happens to be raining or snowing. In addition, we wouldn't have the litter that happens with the wonderful winds that we tend to get on some of our roads. I know my road gets really bad winds. Not to mention sometimes those little bins, they just go flying right down the whole road. They don't even stay put in a bad wind. So the 96-gallon cart would take care of those issues. It would keep the recycling in better condition, and it would give our residents a chance to also work on improving their recycling, because they would have more space for it. And I think one of the things we've learned on the Trash and Recycling Committee is the more space you give someone in a bin, the more they tend to fill it. I mean, whether it's trash or recycling, you give them the extra space, they tend to move towards filling it. So we feel that providing these in advance of the next contract might give us an opportunity to track the trash tonnage and see if we see any change in it, because now people have a larger, easier container to put all their recycling in. Also, it would improve the safety for the hauler. Its Waste Management has put out a flyer spearheading this move towards automated pickup because of worker liability. I mean, they're getting out into traffic in all kinds of weather, and they're also lifting bins that they don't know what's in it. You know, it's supposed to be recycling. Is it all recycling? It's supposed to be just your household trash. Is it all household trash? Not all the time. And so there's been a lot of injuries, and increasing number of haulers are just moving away from having to hire people to do that kind of trash management. Another good point of this is that it doesn't change anything in the current contract. This is not going to be an increase to taxes. The money would come from stabilization. It won't change anything in our current contract. We don't have to negotiate anything. We're going to have to purchase recycling bins no matter what we go to, trash cart-wise. So we know that. We also, our town administrator made a good point that providing the recycling carts in advance of the next contract will give us a more accurate count of the number of households that are actually in town receiving curbside pickup. Because with the accessory dwelling and the in-law apartments, it's not always clear how many families are living at each address. And so in order to properly and effectively implement an automated pickup, we need to know how many households we need to have picked up. And we don't really have the accurate account any longer on what that is. So this would give us an advantage because we'd be able to document, as we distribute the recycling bins, we'd be able to document each household that would be eligible for a trash automated pickup bin when that becomes available. Okay, another reason for why this year is that we did manage to certify a somewhat higher free cash than normal. So I misspoke. The money that's being funded for the capital plan is coming from free cash, not the stabilization. So this year, with a little bit higher free cash coming in, it gives us the opportunity to make this type of a purchase without taking any money away from another capital need in town. So it's not that. And the reason that that came to me through an email that also has been brought up in the past is we do have condominium associations and Nichols Village and others that pay for trash pickup but do not get trash pickup because it's 100% built into our tax rate right now. So the question was raised, well, are these entities now going to be paying for trash bins and also trash pickup? Are we costing them more money or not? And the answer is no, we're not going to cost them more money because in the move to the automated pickup and hopefully to a pay-as-you-throw program, more money will be moved outside the tax rate and into the user's hands to say, okay, how much trash do you want to put out? If you want to put this amount out, okay, but if you want to put double that, you might have to pay this additional fee for the additional cart. So in the longer run, this is more like other towns which never formally adopted the entire trash program into their tax rate. Our town did. Georgetown did not, Merrimack did not. There's many, a lot of the smaller towns like us do not have the entire cost of trash disposal and pickup in the tax rate. For that very reason, that it's hard to predict the tonnage, it's hard to keep track of it. So this type of a program would hopefully keep the tax rate more geared towards government services that everybody needs, and less towards user things that people should maybe pick up on their own. So I feel like that, it's not a huge savings to the people in the condominiums and all, but I think that hopefully it would give them the information that we're not adding a cost to their tax rate for trash. We're removing cost out of the tax rate. That's what this is geared towards, to setting up a much better model for the town going forward. Okay, so those are all the reasons, and I know you all received it in your packet. And there might be other good reasons I haven't thought of, but it makes sense to us, and we thought it made sense to the select board, so I just wanted to make sure of that.
I had some comments. So first, replacing the current Groveland bins, I think is absolutely necessary. Mine was run over 5 years ago. The thing's just gone. I agree with the wind. It has, for some reason, Tuesday's my trash day, and I feel like it's the windiest day. I have Meadow Pond in my backyard, and I'll see trash going right into the pond, which is a shame. Automation is a requirement. That's the future. That's what we're looking at, and to have that, you need standardization, so I think this is a good step. I think the phased approach allows for better planning overall and control on each stage that you're doing this, so identifying the potential risks and the issues early on, understanding the number that you need with just this portion. Also distributing the cost over a longer period of time, so it's not all in one fiscal year. You're breaking it up, I think, is a benefit. And finally, I think it aligns with the residents' concerns. So I took a look at the survey results. There were 727 responses to, is your recycling cart large enough? 53% said no. 44% said yes. But of those 44%, 46% had a 64-gallon or more. So they already have a lot of recycling. So I don't see a lot of risks with not moving forward with the 96-gallon.
Jason?
I think the biggest advantage is the advantage that we give our town administrator when negotiating the next agreement, next contract for trash, because we're already stepping in that forward direction that most of them are going to require of all the towns anyway. So once we have that in place, it will make the negotiation of the contract go a little bit smoother, a little bit easier, and be a little bit more beneficial for the residents of Groveland.
Mark?
I'm good.
Ed?
Yeah, what happens if people have more than will fit in a 96-gallon cart? At what point do they, what do they do with that?
Well, our current hauler has said that if you have additional cardboard and you break it down appropriately and you put it beside your bin, they will pick it up. Once we move to automated, we would be asking that you know, if you have too much one week, you wait and get into the next week. And we've also spoken about the town perhaps having a site just for the cardboard, because that is one of the bigger, you know, trash items that can fill up your recycling quickly, so that if you happen to get, you know, a major appliance or something and you really want to get that out of your home, you don't want to have to hold on to it. It's possible going forward in the new contract, we could negotiate some kind of a cardboard pickup site.
When did the Trash and Recycling Committee vote on going forward with a 96-gallon cart?
We took a consensus at our last meeting. We took a vote at the meeting on, was it Thursday night? Thursday night, yes. This last Thursday.
And what about moving forward with trash?
We
What
are
do
still.
decide on that?
Well, we're still working on that. So, you know, we're taking, as we said, a phased approach so that it seems to make sense to spread this out over a 2-year period to get a little more locked down. How many households are we actually going to need curbside pickup from? Because once we start trying to provide the carts, we want to have as accurate a count as we can have. And I think this would give us an opportunity under less pressure, because there'd be no new contract looming that we have to meet the deadline for. We'd have the benefit of this coming fiscal year to kind of get these recycling carts out there. They wouldn't have to be all rolled out in 1 month like a new contract would. I think this will allow for a much, much smoother negotiation and implementation of a new contract.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, if you wish to go to the microphone. Yep.
Thank you, Kathy, I appreciate it. The decision about what size barrels and negotiating the contract through Rebecca, the great work of the Trash Recycling Committee, advising the Select Board, I just want to make it really clear to the public that this is a decision that will be made by the Select Board. And I mention that because I've seen some communications that people said, hey, at town meeting, we're going to have a decision about trash. So Article 6, that is correct, but it has nothing to do with what you guys are talking about. Article 16 is trash disposal for property other than single, and therefore 2 or 3 family properties. So I'll read it what it is. This article is, this bylaw clarifies that commercial, nonprofit organizations, and multifamily properties are responsible for managing their own waste and recycling, ensuring that taxpayers are not charged for these services. So thank you for putting this agenda item on. This decision is vested in you today and forever. It will never appear on a town meeting floor.
Okay.
Thank-
Oh, but the recycling bins are on the warrant in the capital plan. So wanted to get the clarification out there. And hello.
Hello, Brian Canizaro, 27 Groveland Commons Way. I do have a technical question to ask. Your earlier dissertation, when you were discussing applying the trash totes and the recycling totes to a particular residence, is that based upon the address? Because you had mentioned that if you have like an accessory dwelling unit or you add an apartment on, would they be applicable to getting their own trash? That wasn't really clear. as to how that process worked? Or did you discuss that during the trash recycling, how that would be addressed? Because from my understanding is an EDU is part of that address that the unit is attached or freestanding on that property. So how would that equate to a different address, that type of stuff?
Right, we're still untangling that, I'll be honest, it's not our area of expertise.
Okay.
I would defer to our town administrator more on that.
It's not the address, it's the amount of units. So when we have our assessors' cards for the properties that we currently have, they
Yes.
have units. So they'll say that's a 2-unit or a 4-bedroom, or they'll have a bedroom count or a unit count. So this would not be a new address, but it would allow us to understand how many units of housing are at that particular address.
So I guess my second part of the question then is then the language that has been put forth in previous meetings when they had talked about, one recycling cart, one trash cart to a particular residence, if it's not based on the address, it's based upon the amount of units, then how do you barcode those, or would that be part of your determination? How do you barcode knowing that this residence now has 2 96 gallons and 2 trash, and, how do you resolve that dynamic?
It's
Because,
like a condominium, so you don't just have, you have one address, or sorry, like an apartment, you have one address, and then you have different numbers, like apartment A, B, C, D, so you'd have that, would be part of the labeling process. So then if it exceeded 4, then they would be responsible for providing their own trash per the bylaw if it's accepted at town meeting. But if it's under 4, and they're labeled being the units, then we know how many units there are. Now we'll have a record of that so that we can properly make sure that they have those receptacles that are appropriate for those units. And they do have barcodes on them, so they would be associated with that unit code, whatever it is and however it's decided. But just like, a larger complex, you would have something that would have individual units listed out.
and the company that you'd be going with to secure these carts, will you somehow negotiate that, okay, we're building in our town, we're anticipating this growth over the next year or two, will you be able to comfortably be able to afford the new carts for those residents once they come online? How would you handle that?
So we have the number that we put forward for the quote with the contractor, with the vendors. We were working with 2 vendors, and we got prices, and there was a vendor with a lower price. And so they had confirmed that as part of the process, we would estimate high, and what we don't use, we don't use. And then others, like we had said in the Trash and Recycling Committee, we're discussing this, if you're if disabled or an older adult with mobility issues, you would be able to downgrade your cart size, which would be a lower cost as well. So all of those were taken into consideration with the vendor when they provided the quote, based upon that number that was inflated slightly to accommodate for an error here or there, a missed unit here and there. So that was incorporated as part of that initial assessment. But in working with that vendor, they would be willing to work with us to get better records, get a better list, so that, as the board mentioned, if we were to move forward with the trash, we would know what those figures are a little bit more concretely. So we would have the ability and the flexibility to work with the vendor to establish that.
And I guess the last thing is that once more properties come online that would be eligible for roadside trash pickup, the procurement of those containers would be pretty easy for the town to do, to provide that access for them.
Correct. Both of the vendors that we're utilizing, or that we sought prices from, are on the state bid list as well, so that makes it a little bit easier, so their prices are locked in. So they would be able to work with us as we onboarded more households, and we would be able to look at that based upon the numbers coming through from the planning board and the proposed applications, as well as permit information that would be shared with us through the building commissioner.
Thank you very
Yep.
much.
Those are all good, very good questions, thank you. Okay,
Question?
yes.
The contract is good until next year.
Yes.
When a contract, when it goes out to bid, are you going to bid it that if the company will supply the barrels for the trash?
So we can put something out there that would do that, but what we've received from at least 4 of the haulers that we've spoken to is that by doing such, it will drive up the cost of the contract, because The state contract has a set price for municipalities, so we're getting a better deal going through that contract than when they purchase directly from the vendors themselves. So we can put it in there if that's what the town wishes to do and the board wishes to put forward, but it's been advised that we negotiate the purchase or the lease of the carts separate from them so that does not drive up their price.
Well, you could do two, one with carts and one without.
You could do that.
That seems to make sense.
Right, what we've been discussing more is rather than just a request for bid, which is kind of a locked-in thing, request for proposals or request for information, and again, our town administrator is an expert in the procurement area, so she's very familiar with the lingo of these types of documents, and we can certainly provide a template to the board if you want it for information, like the best practices for this type of process is basically you go out and what we're trying to do now in the next, after we deal with the recycling carts, is to start to spec out what the trash cart thing could look like, what it would cost, what are the pros and cons of different scenarios. And then you would want to come up with a scenario. You know, you don't need to go out for bid, but you have to come up with an outline of what the town is looking to provide and get. And that's kind of where we're at right now, is working on that. So that would go out, and then we would get, by doing it as information or proposals, it allows more flexibility in areas of customer service, in areas of if something goes wrong, do we have recourse? Do we have the ability to hire another hauler to come in and pick up if something goes wrong with the company we contracted with? We want to have a very much improved contract that provides really good service and protects the taxpayers in the event of anything going wrong, including taking the trash to a site that might potentially come back to us, like happened with the landfill just down the road. We ended up paying over $500,000 because some of our trash was taken to that landfill, and then it was determined that things were put in that landfill that weren't allowed, and everybody whose trash went there ended up having to pay. It completely wiped out our free cash in 1 year. So there's a lot of details that were never thought about. Nobody ever really spent the kind of time on the trash contract that we're spending right now. But you really do want to think about all of these details and have them covered in the contract so that the town is totally and completely protected, you know, from any adversity that might come from the removal of trash, okay, and recycling. So all of those good things are all spec'd out, and it's really complex. It's a lot more than I understand, and I'm so grateful that we have a town administrator that's been going to these hauler meetings and coming back with more and more information. And I'm glad that we have a committee of volunteers that has been going steady now for, 2 years? We're going to be going on 2 years this summer, I think. So thanks to everybody on the committee. It's been a long process, but it's been useful. Good? Okay. All right, so we can move on the agenda. I think we're on to appointments, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just double check. Yes, we are. So we have a request for an appointment of Mike Dempsey of Uptack Road to the Historic Commission effective April 14th, 2025 through June 30th, 2027.
I'll make a motion, we appoint Mike Dempsey to the Historic Commission effective April 14th, 2025 to June 30th, 2027.
Second that.
Okay. Any discussion? There be none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Mike Dempsey is appointed. Thank you, Michael. Approval of minutes. Do we have any minutes? No, okay. Any items not reasonably anticipated? Nobody, okay. And now town administrator time. We have our memo.
So I just have a couple of updates that you'll see in the memo. Collective bargaining discussions are still ongoing with the police department. We're hopeful that we can come to a resolution in the next few weeks. We did have fire alarm testing here at Town Hall. That took place at April 11th. Everything looks good. For the town meeting update, I did want to alert you that obviously with a very large document, there were some errors. We tried our best to make sure that we had everything squared away, but there were a few things that did not work when we copy and pasted and transferred over into the main document, and then a couple of oversights that we saw. So just to bring them to your attention, and we can and will make motions on the floor to correct these errors, but for Article 20, this is in regards to the floodplain overlay district, Section K floodway encroachments. That was language that was struck through in the article, and that language is currently in the bylaw and must remain. If that language is not in there, we will not be compliant with the federal guidelines, and that will not be good. So that is something that we'll need to address. Article 30 for the CPC, for the Affordable Housing and Home Repair Initiative, the language had from $20,000 from the general category for community preservation, but it should be the affordable housing. And the same with Article 29 for the Groveland Congregational Church clock and bell restoration. It just said from the general reserve, and it should have been the historic preservation general reserve. So both of those need to be updated. And then the last two that we have are under the enterprise fund. That's Article 42 and Article 43. The first one is in regards to the water department budget, and the second is the sewer department budget. And as you'll see, we updated the fiscal year to reflect 2026 for the expenses, but we forgot to update the revenues to reflect the fiscal year 2026. So both of those need to be updated as well to reflect 2026 water department revenue and 2026 sewer department revenue. So again, not major in terms of the grand scheme of things, but they are major when it comes to implementation because they need to be correct. So
Yes.
we will be sharing this with the finance board as well, and we will be communicating with town council so we can hopefully have updated motions so that they're available so that we can make sure that those are rectified prior to taking an official vote.
Okay.
For field use and property use permits, we issued a field use permit for the United Cricket to use 150 Center Street from April 26th through August 17th. As we had discussed at a previous meeting, they had been looking for additional space, but this permit only extends to the space that they have been currently using. They are not exploring that additional space. They have been told that if they do want to explore that additional space, it is something that they must come back to the select board with, and they must adhere to some of the conditions that the Conservation Commission had brought forward during those conversations as well. So we will be keeping an eye out for that, but all of the other conditions that we've put on this particular space in the past remain, so making sure that the gate is locked, making sure that the porta potties are locked, making sure that they're, keeping their equipment stored appropriately, et cetera. The other field use permit was to a group of Groveland parents for the use of the pickleball tennis courts on Fridays from April 18th through June 27th. So they will be reserving the entire area for those particular dates. And then I know, I wasn't sure if Select Board Member Parento would be back this meeting, so I didn't put it on as an agenda item, but will the next, about the update on the pickleball tennis court and how the reservation systems are going and how things are getting accomplished. And so far, it's been good. We didn't have as much of an influx as we thought, but we issued 7 pickleball permits for all residents since we had met the last time. So I will, with the chair's permission, put that on the agenda for the next meeting so that we can discuss in more detail and I can get some more information for you. For grants, the fire department received a SAFE grant for seniors and for I guess it's called the Senior Safe for older adults in terms of fire prevention and safety education, as well as a SAFE program to support education in schools. So the total was $6,700. So we're very appreciative of the fire chief and his team in doing what they do best and bringing in additional monies to help support the programming and outreach that they do. For procurement, there's no updates. Technical review conferences, there's no updates. Again, I provided the minutes from the last meeting that we had for 932 Salem Street. So if there's a desire to put that back on the agenda, we can. However, we have not heard back from the applicant at this point in time. And then for meetings, events, and seminars, I have them listed. So if there's any specific questions that you have, I'd be happy to answer them.
Yes, I had just a couple of quick ones. The update on the Shanahan parking lot, is that?
So I actually just received a update from the contractor today. They are looking to put binder coat onto the Shanahan parking lot on Thursday, weather permitting, and then they will be looking to do top coat the following week. So we are coordinating with the leagues that are currently using the field. We do have a temporary parking plan in place for them to park and where they can park and where they cannot park. But we are hopeful that once the binder goes down, even if the top coat takes a little longer, that we'll be able to open up the site so that they can actually park in that particular area, alleviating a lot of the congestion. And then in regards to the Pines, as you'll see, the walkway and walking path from the town hall complex down to the bottom has essentially been completed.
Oh, I see.
We are looking at the grading going on over in the area by the softball and baseball field that is heading down to the boat ramp. So once they're finalizing that, they also believe that they will coordinate with the paving that's happening over at Shanahan, because obviously if they're mobilized, that's a more efficient use of resources and monies. So that being said, they're looking at a final top coat for that particular area the following week as well, so not this week, but next week. There will have to be some coordination with that in terms of the driving. So once we get a little bit more details, I'll be able to share more with the board. Even if we don't meet, I will send out correspondence alerting you to such. We have been communicating through social media and other avenues to make sure people are aware, and that they've been welcome to contact my office if they have any questions or any concerns. But we are moving along, and hopefully by the end of this month, both projects will be 100% complete, and then we will begin work on the skate park that's supposed to be constructed in the spring as well.
Okay, yes, someone had asked me about the skate park. And then, I don't see it under correspondence. Did you include in the packet, everybody got the FEMA letter? Yes? That was in my packet? Okay, so we all got, that's just informational? That we've complied.
So that is in regards to the article as well. It's just
Okay.
making sure that our flood maps have been updated and that we are in compliance. So hopefully we can get that correction, and that will make sure that we are in compliance.
Oh, okay, good. Good, does anyone else have some questions? Oh, Ed, go
Question.
ahead.
Two questions for Rebecca. On the field use permit for United Cricket, 150 Center Street, is that Monday through Friday?
No, it's only on the weekends, it's Saturday and
It
Sunday.
wasn't, it was just from April 26th to August 17th. It didn't say it was just, it's on, just on one day,
My apologies, yes, it's just on Saturday and Sunday.
Saturday and Sunday. How about the field use permit for Groveland Parent to use the pickleball tennis courts on Fridays, April 18th to June 27th? Is that, is it, what time frames are they using it?
It's just on Friday, and I believe that it's later in the evening from like 3 to 7.
That won't
or
affect
so.
the residents' open use?
Open play, correct.
Okay.
We
Maybe
made sure
should-
to block it off.
Maybe we should list the time on that so that,
In the future, I'll make sure to do so.
Anyone else? Nope. Listen. No? Okay. I see you do have a meeting scheduled on the Johnson's Creek Dam, my favorite little.
Correct. We have been meeting with the consultants in regards to the Johnson's Creek Dam. We are concerned about the latest report as I had brought to the board's attention. The wall seems to be pushing out, so the engineer has proposed some remedies to try and slow down that process, install that process. in addition to a temporary fix of slip lining the culvert pipe that's currently deteriorating and falling, which is causing structural issues. So we have been in touch with the Office of Dam and, the Office of Dams and Safety. And so we submitted our inspection report, and we're hoping to get more information to them about if we can declare it an emergency. Based upon their feedback, most likely in some other similar circumstances in Tewksbury, we will be going to the Conservation Commission at their meeting, first meeting in May, with the engineer to discuss trying to declare this an emergency situation so that we can move forward with the slip lining company, as well as the work to reinforce the wall so that there is no further deterioration of the structure itself until the longer-term fix, which would be the removal of the dam, as we talked about at another one of our meetings. But that is kind of a 5-year type of project. It's not something that can be done overnight. So again, the goal is to bring the engineer with the expertise and the engineering background to explain to the Conservation Commission the dire situation that we find ourselves in with the particular structure and see what they will be willing to do. So they would most likely, again, want to move quickly on this, just based upon the latest inspection report. And what I'll do is at your next meeting, I'll include that inspection report, which just got stamped yesterday, in your packet so that you can review that. But you'll see that it's moved to a more serious situation. So we are hopeful that we can have some productive conversations. But we're working with the Office of Dam and Safety, GZA, who is our consultant, as well as the state, in looking at the watershed as a whole.
Okay, so just for informational purposes, if the Conservation Commission declares it an emergency, does that allow us to spend money to help support it? You know, the project itself will cost so much, we don't have that set aside yet.
So it's not necessarily a funding mechanism
Okay.
or funding means as to why that the Conservation Commission would be likely to determine that it's an emergency. It's more of the permitting process. So like we just talked about, the removal of the dam itself is permitting process.
Yeah.
It's not the design that's gonna take 5 years, it's a permitting process. There's habitat, there's a lot of sensitive areas that we need to be mindful of when we go through that process. So if the Conservation Commission were to deem it an emergency, we would be more apt to move forward with a more streamlined approach of getting that immediate work done, and then following the proper steps to make sure that the permitting was in place to support those activities. So we would still have to comply with the permitting and all that is required, but we would be able to act more swiftly and get that work done prior to some of that activity, or prior to a full-on permitting process.
So, but how would we fund the work?
So we've been putting some monies from Chapter 90 aside in case the dam were to fail.
Oh, okay, okay.
And we would need to have some type of intermediate repair already. So we have about $150,000 that we've allocated for the slip lining, the materials, as well as now incorporating additional boulders and rocks that would be like the riprap that would hold the wall in place and support the structure. So those monies have already been kind of established as part of the Chapter 90 program and put aside. So we would be using those funds for the more immediate fix. And then we have the Dams and Seawall grant, as well as other grant funding that's supporting the design, permitting, and further research of the watershed.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
That's all for Salem Street?
Correct.
Yeah,
Well, the watershed extends a little bit further down. It also includes the Mill Pond Dam as well as the Pleasure Pond Dam. So it really is from the Salem Street down.
to the old swimming hole.
It's a lazy river.
Yep. But I did look at the dam, Mark, just so you know. He's laughing.
Real.
No. And they've marked the rocks where they're pushing. There's like blue paint. Yes, so. Hey, this dam, it interests me, especially if it's gonna, have a problem. So, thank you. I never knew we had a dam in town. And now we do. Now it's not working well, so we really do. But thank you for that update. Anything else from our town administrator's time? There being none, I think it's selectman time next. Am I right about that?
Yep.
Right or wrong, I think we are. Back to that. Yes, we are. So, Ed, do you have anything that you wanted to report on?
I don't have anything.
Mark?
I just wanted to say thank you to everybody that came to candidates night. I was in Aruba, so unfortunately I was in Aruba, but everybody, it seemed very good when I was watching it on YouTube the next day, so
Yep.
thanks for everybody that came and did that.
Thanks. And Becky?
I got nothing.
Jason?
No, I'm good.
Okay. I did want to say that we have a good-sized town meeting warrant coming up on the, I'm going to say the date wrong, is it the 28th? Or what date is our town meeting?
28th.
I've got that right, okay, the 28th. So the select board will meet before that meeting at 6 PM. But also, I'd like to ask our other town boards and committees to please try and have members in attendance, because it's a complicated warrant. It has, as we said, the floodplain, it has the MBTA, it has the Affordable Housing Initiative. There's a lot of different, really important issues. And I'd really love for our own town boards and committees to be there so that they can also weigh in with their expertise. Because as much as we all try to read the whole warrant, we do try to keep current on these projects and everything, but we're not as expert as the committees that really do all the work on these articles and bring them forward. So we would appreciate the other boards and committees please trying to have people present and be willing to volunteer if there are more specific questions that we might not have the answers to. Because it is helpful to show that we do have a lot of volunteers in town who spend a lot of time on this town meeting warrant. They do great work, they bring forward great ideas. And again, we do try to get as much information as possible and become as expert as we can, but we're not nearly as expert as the committees and boards that bring these articles forward. So it'd be helpful to have members present that can help out with some of the more complex questions, which I'm sure will come up. We have a pretty varied and interesting warrant this year, I think. No overrides, so that's a good thing. Tax rate will be 2.5%, but a lot of important articles. So, and I echo what Mark said. The turnout for candidates night was fantastic, and I watched it from home, and it was really interesting. Everybody did a fantastic job. It was great. It was great to see so many people interested in serving the town. Yep. Okay. If there's nothing more, we know our next meeting is at 6 PM on the 28th. Take a motion to adjourn.
Move for adjournment.
Second.
6:30, 6 PM?
6 PM. 6 PM. 6 PM, correct, Rebecca?
Correct.
Right, the town meeting starts at
6:30.
6:30, okay, yes. Town meeting at 6:30, select board meeting, yes, select board meeting at 6 PM. So we're going to adjourn at about 7:58 PM. All in favor? And it's unanimous. Thank you.